this with Anna before this meeting. There are tax havens in the world, but also in Europe, which use their power or abuse their taxation systems to the detriment of other countries. And we should stop this, because this is not helping the European Union to build trust towards each other. And this topic is discussed quite recently, thanks to the strong voice of President Macron and Chancellor Merkel, in the context of digital taxation. And we fully subscribe to this aspect of the discussion. But on top of this, I would be in favor of eliminating all the tax havens from Europe, because this would equalize, this would bring the level playing field. And the third aspect is avoiding different standards for different member states. Like there was mentioned by Mark about north-south. Okay, but actually I've seen that Italy was treated differently than France. And it shouldn't be so, because there is this feeling of pride and equality, equal standards, and we should apply the same standards for different member states. And in terms of migration, Klaus, we cannot turn a blind eye on what is happening in the eastern flank of the European Union. And there was a Russian aggression in 2014 on Ukraine, and there are millions of people migrating out of Ukraine into Poland, and some of them are refugees, but our procedures are differently shaped. They are shaped in such a way that so that these people who are coming to Poland, they can very quickly take advantage of our economy. They can apply for jobs, and this is why you don't see so many refugees, people having refugee status from Ukraine or other Eastern European countries. But we do contribute a lot to this, to easing off tensions at the eastern flank of the European Union.
Thank you. Anna, you represent business. How do you react? What would you like to be seen to be accomplished
in Europe? Yeah, I just like to challenge Mark on the solidarity on immigration, because I think I'm a big fan of looking at the facts, and it's probably not known that between the years 1999 and 2008, Spain, which is a country of then 40 million people, received 5 million immigrants. 5 million. And so I think this is something which has to be considered. Spain is competitive. We have 19 million people working today versus 13 million. We have created most jobs, but we have had by far the biggest flow of immigrants of any European country. And honestly, I'm a passionate European, but I think sometimes we need to look at the facts and understand, not just what happens today, but what has been happening. So this is quite important as we speak of solidarity. And just one other fact which is important, and Chancellor Merkel was a big sponsor of this, by the end of this century, Africa will go from 1 billion to 4 billion people. And I agree climate change is a challenge, but I would say this is as big a challenge for Europe than the others. So now on the European question, I think first that, again, looking at the facts, not just the world, but Europe has really done incredibly well over the last 40 years. There is no question that it has done well thanks to the market economy, thanks to freedoms and all the things that we as Europeans value. But I also believe that we now have a challenge, and to me the big challenge is institution building. Now, we have done a lot of that in the last few years, but I believe for us to take Europe to the next stage, and with a commissioner on trade here on my left, I think that as we see America saying America first, and China clearly saying China first, my ambition would be that Europe punches its weight. We are the second largest economy as a group. So I would ask of politicians around me here and others 3 things. The first, and I'm very much in your camp on the being pragmatic. And the one line I would say for our young people, let's be pragmatic and let's make it relevant to them. And I think the first thing, and you said that, but it's hugely important, let's complete the single market for services. Super important. And let me tell you why. Again, look at the facts. We are 2/3 of the US economy. We are the largest bank by value in Europe. We are 1/4 the size of the largest American bank. We are 1/10 the size of the big American platforms that compete head-on with all of us today. So my first point is scale matters, because the largest two banks in the Eurozone, we have less than 2% market share, less than 2%. And the relevant market shares today are operating systems, are things that we didn't look at before. So single market for services. Second, we need European Banking Union desperately. And I know here the North and the South maybe think differently, but if anybody in the room thinks that this is about banking, that this is about the non-real economy, think again. Because if banks are competitive, if banks can operate at scale, and scale matters, we need single banking union. We need the common European deposit insurance, because that will reduce risks, so then we can share risks. And I'm sure I'll get some challenge here, but this is important for my SME customers. And the other fact I'd like to share is that banking in Europe is important to the average person, to the small company, because 90% of financing comes from banks. In the US, that's 50%. So it's super important. And then the last, third thing, and Mateusz touched on that, and I really believe that this is a unique opportunity for Europe to lead, not just for Europe, but for the world. And I think this goes way beyond digital tax. It goes to a new framework, a new governance for the digital age. And we need politicians and governments to understand how the economy works. There are no barriers between sectors. What is a bank? We do payments. All the big platforms do payments. Why should I be subject to different rules on payments to others? And that's what PSD2 does. So I think the three things for Europe and the new Commission on this area to do, of this governance, which, by the way, should be global, not just for Europe, but we can show the rest of the world the way, are around competition. How do we think about competition? Is it the same as in the old world? Who is competing with who? It's about taxation. The principle that you pay tax where you make your profits is not being followed. And that creates a lot of problems in communities, in jobs. And the third one, which is related to the first, is regulation and supervision. Same services, same rules, and that is not happening. And I think the Commission is very much aware of this. But my last recommendation would be, we are famously known in the world for being slow in Europe. But we also try to do the right thing. And so when we wrote the e-commerce directive, we didn't know what the world was going to look like today, but now we do. And I think people like Mark and Mateusz understand this really well, and a lot of the commissioners. And so the one thing I would ask of Europe is, let's prove everybody wrong. Let's do the right thing, but let's do it a bit faster.
Mark, you will have an opportunity, but first, Leo, what would you add here?
Yeah, I don't want to repeat what's already been said, except that I do very much agree on the single market, the opportunities there on digital, on services, and also on banking union. And Ireland is a very strong supporter of us getting the job done, and I think we can over the next couple of years. What I would add to that would be around international development, and particularly Africa, and providing adequate space in the MFF for us to do much more as Europe in Africa and in the developing world. And I think that's something that our citizens would like us to do as well. And I had the chance to visit Africa in the last couple of weeks. Went to Mali, where the Irish Defence Forces are part of the EU training mission there, part of our security contribution, and then to Ethiopia, which is it's our single biggest international development partner. And I already knew it, but you have to spend time there to fully appreciate the extent to which problems like drug trafficking, like human trafficking, illegal migration, climate change, radicalization and terrorist risks, that all of those big problems that visit us on our streets in Europe have origins or have transit points in countries that are politically unstable, that don't have human rights and democracy, that don't have economic opportunity for their young people. And that's an area where I think we could make an enormous difference if Western countries spent what's been spent on a war in Syria, on international development in Africa. We wouldn't have half the problems that we're talking about now when it comes to migration and security. And that's something I'd like to see form a very big part of the new MFF and a much greater part of the European Union's political mission.
Leo, I would like to come back to one issue Anna raised, which is taxing the platform companies, because you are hosting
we're more than halfway through the panel and nobody mentioned Brexit or tax yet.
Some of those platform companies, and there is the European, the efforts to create a common policy. Just one comment related.
But sorry, I didn't say taxing platform companies. I said fair taxation for all types of companies. This is very important because I am absolutely not in favor of a digital tax. I'm in favor that you pay taxes where you generate value. And this is because if we say, it seems like we're against, I'm not against, we work with all of them. We just want to have a fair, level playing field on taxation. So it's very important.
Yeah.
Leo.
Sorry about that correction.
No, it's good.
Because otherwise, it seems like Europe is anti. No, we're not anti. We are absolutely for innovation. But we want to be able to invest billions, and if we have, everybody paying a bit more, then we pay a bit less, maybe.
I have a very simple view on this. I think big companies should pay their taxes, should pay the taxes they owe, and should pay them in full, and should pay them where they are owed. And the best way we can respond to the changes in the way the world economy is developed is to agree these things at an international level through the OECD. And one of the things that Ireland has done in recent years, we've never taken more money in from corporation tax in the last year than ever in our history, and that's part of the reason. Part of the cause of that is the fact that we have closed down things like the double Irish. We no longer tolerate stateless corporations. We're forever closing loopholes that exist in our tax system, and we do that through the OECD and through the BEPS process, and we're going to continue to do that. Our objection to a digital tax is that rather than being sales taxes like VAT fall where sales happen, profit taxes are applied where profits are made. And what was proposed in the digital tax was to impose effectively a levy on turnover. And you wouldn't apply that to car manufacturers. You wouldn't apply that to aviation manufacturers. If you applied the same principles to aviation, Ireland through aircraft leasing and Ryanair probably buys more aircraft than almost any country in Europe. We don't get any of the profits of Airbus or Boeing. So the principles have to be that the tax is where value is created, not where there's turnover.
Mark, your reaction. I see also, Anna, you are, let's say, energized, but Mark.
No, just a few points. As you correctly said at the beginning, Europe is about nie wieder Krieg, no more war. After the Second World War, we built the most successful defense organization in world history, NATO. We built the biggest trading bloc in world history, European Union, which is also a community of values, and by working together, providing a collective sense and reality of safety. But yes, I agree, we have to accelerate. On the internal market and on the banking union, all the plans are there, all the opportunities are there. On the internal market, there are vested interests in some of the bigger member states, and we need the political leadership there to overcome those vested interests so that we can collectively build a bigger market, again, with twice the size of the Dutch economy added to the overall European economy. On banking union, this is directly related to the point I made on the north-south divide. Because if we cannot trust that the Commission, as a custodian of our treaties, of our agreements, is not keeping Italy to the fire, because they are at this moment blatantly with a debt to GDP of over 130%, with a too high deficit, and then start to negotiate, it has to be much firmer. I absolutely believe that, because otherwise how can we explain in some of the other member states that we are putting in place the necessary reforms if somehow these bigger economies get away with it? Again, we will still do it because we need it. At this moment, the Netherlands is growing at twice the pace of almost all our surrounding competing economies. Why? Because we put in place all the necessary reforms and fiscal adjustments. And we do have now a budget surplus. So we do this because we believe it is necessary. But on banking union, there is exactly that lack of trust now happening. Because you can only really move to the next phase of banking union if we know that the risks in the system are reduced. And it starts at the state level and then in the banking sector. Take, for example, the non-performing loans. We have to reduce those risks before we can really move into the next phase. Because otherwise, Dutch taxpayers will feel that one day they will have to pay for banks in other countries which have not made the necessary, taken the necessary steps to make the banking system healthier in those countries. And we need to do that because banking union, separating the sovereigns from the banks, is crucial for more financial stability in the European Union. Completing the single market is core to the basic promise we made each other. That was Europe, nie wieder Krieg, no more war, is about collectively being successful in terms of competitiveness, and that means jobs for people. And secondly, by being a successful bloc with common values, also being successful in terms of our collective safety. And again, I see those opportunities. My frustration is that I feel that this year we might again lose a lot of time discussing migration, east-west, finances, state finances, north-south, and this should not be necessary.
We are coming, unfortunately, to an end of this session, but I would like to have some conclusion. So, Leo, what should be actually, in your opinion, the next concrete steps we should undertake to reinforce trust into the future of Europe? Not only internally, but also in the whole world, Europe, to recreate the necessary trust. And I will ask the same question to each of you.
I think that what we have to do over the next maybe 5-10 years is to move Europe from just being an economic power in the world, an economic force for good in the world, and a trading bloc into an international group of nations that is politically influential. America has decided to move away from its former role in world leadership, regrettably, at least for now. China is becoming ever stronger, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I think that Europe needs to really be able to have a common foreign policy in particular and act in the world and to be a force for good in the world on all of the issues that we've talked about: economic development, international development, climate change, and also on international development as well.
Thank you, Taoiseach. And Matthäus.
Well, first, I think we have to again learn how to listen to people, because Vox Populi is not populism, which is sometimes stigmatized as this, some movements in some other countries, in Italy, in France, and so on, whereas this is a signal, what is happening around us, that people want to get empowered, they want to better understand what is going on in European institutions. So grassroots integration, this would be first, my first proposal. Second, let's go back and accelerate with the projects where almost everybody agrees, if not everybody, like, for instance, Capital Markets Union, which is bringing more financing for small and mid-sized enterprises, and in particular, in comparison to the United States, Europe is so much dependent exclusively on the banking sector rather than, or credit from banks, rather than diversity of financing for small and mid-sized, where the jobs are created, and this could bring additional new dynamism and new optimism for many European middle-class type in many European middle-class type areas. The third one is level playing field in terms of taxation, and we differ a little bit with Leo and Mark on this, but we are ready to talk about those. Much of what is happening today in Europe stems from this very first division. Post-Second World War, there was an Iron Curtain. Holland was on the right side of the rainbow, but we were left within the communist bloc. So for 50 years, we couldn't develop technology-wise and so on. And now, in terms of taxation, in terms of many other critically important systems for socio-economic environment, we need to take this into account to have a real level playing field. This was an interesting intervention by Leo about where the taxes should be paid, turnover versus where the value is created. So this would be my gut feeling that we have to find out a common denominator of all of those. And the last one, between the member states and the European institutions, like an example of yellow card, which was introduced into the Lisbon Treaty, but was really not taken into account by the European Commission, even when 11 countries have agreed on yellow card procedure a couple of years ago in the context of posting of workers directive. So this procedure and such procedures are extremely important from the point of view of empowering member states and in particular national parliaments. And without full engagement of national parliaments, there will be this feeling of disconnect between Brussels and the rest of Europe. And we have to avoid this, so we need to introduce procedures which will bring those two worlds closer to each other.
Very short. We are running out of time. Cecilia.
Well, Europe is so many things. It's the Commission, it's the Member States, it's the Parliament, it's the national parliaments. And right now we are preparing for the European Parliament election. And we see a rise of xenophobic, populist, nationalist movements, but it's also a possibility to show that leadership, to show an alternative. What we have achieved so far, what we could achieve together if we deepen the cooperation politically as well, foreign policy, not only economically. If we do the reforms we have said that we should do, and if we focus on some targeted issues that we need to do. So it is a fantastic possibility to gather and to show that strong pro-European leadership for the Europe we want to create. And that I really hope that we can do. And then it is about delivering. That's in the end what counts to the citizen. Do we deliver on our promises? And that the Commission can do more, but it's also very much about the Member States.
Anna?
Yeah, I'd say the three things I said before, which is single market, banking union, and it's important because that's the only way Europe gets growth and it gets the scale to be competitive in the world. And the third thing is we need the Commission to work on this new governance, and taxation has to be fair, competition has to be fair, and we need to understand that the sectors have no boundaries, and we need to remodel the market system for the digital age, which goes way beyond a digital tax. It's much more than that. And this is essential because this is what will make Europe successful as it's been for the past 50 years, for the next 50 years. And by the way, there's one thing we haven't spoken about, nobody, but I think is crucial, which is education and reskilling. And we haven't discussed that. But that's the other thing. We should reinvent education. It served us well for the past. We totally need to change that for the next 50 years, but not take 50 years.
Mark?
Why is someone a member of an organization? As an individual, a member of a community or whatever, or a country, a member of the European Union? Because you strongly believe that the collective is bigger than the sum of its parts. For the collective to be bigger than the sum of its parts, you have to stick to the rules. A deal is a deal. Promises made are promises kept. And why do we have these two divides in Europe at the moment? Because we don't keep our promises. And that's really my worry. If we would, we could make huge progress. Yes, on banking union, yes, on internal market, yes, on the migration issue. It would be easy.
Why my European identity is reconfirmed by the discussion we have here. I think we defined very well the remedies for the many, let's say, deficiencies we have. Now what counts is that the medicine is taken very fast, because we cannot lose time. The world is moving, and it's no excuse to say we are now in the time of the European elections, of the Parliament and so on. We have to make absolutely sure that 2009 is not considered to be a year lost. And I think we had many proposals here, so I wish that really, with the goodwill which we have seen demonstrated here, we move forward to build the to build Europe as it was my dream when I grew up. Thank you very much, and please remain seated, because we will immediately proceed with the State of the World message of the Secretary General of the United Nations. Thank you, the panel.
Audio circuit for the Reuters live service. This is the primary audio circuit for the Reuters live service. This is the primary audio circuit for the Reuters live service. This is the primary audio circuit for the Reuters live service. This is the primary audio circuit for the Reuters live